Rich Dad, Poor Dad, Part 1, Setting the Stage for a New Mindset on Money. Welcome. Today we're exploring Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki, a book that's transformed the way millions think about money, investing, and financial freedom. If you've ever wondered why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others struggle paycheck to paycheck, this book has some eye-opening answers. Imagine this. Robert grew up with two father figures. One was his biological dad, well-educated, hardworking, but always financially struggling. This is his poor dad. The other was his best friend's dad, a savvy entrepreneur who understood money deeply, his rich dad. These two men shaped Robert's financial education in completely different ways. The lessons from Rich Dad challenged everything Robert learned at school and from his poor dad. Why does this matter? Most of us grow up thinking that good grades, a steady job, and working hard guarantee financial security. This was the mindset of Robert's poor dad, who valued formal education and job security. But Rich Dad showed Robert that this approach, while comfortable, might never lead to real financial freedom. Right away, this book nudges us to rethink. Is your money working for you, or are you working for money? This simple question sets the tone for the entire journey. The key differences between the two dads. Rich Dad and Poor Dad had very different attitudes about money, work, and education. Poor Dad believed in the traditional path: study hard, get a good job, work for a paycheck, and save money. Rich Dad taught that financial education, knowing how money works and making it work for you, is the real key to wealth. One of the first important lessons Robert learned was that financial education is often missing from traditional schooling. Schools teach math and reading, but rarely teach how to manage money, invest, or create assets that generate income. This gap leaves many people unprepared for real-world financial challenges. What is financial intelligence? The book emphasizes that building financial intelligence, understanding the difference between assets and liabilities, is crucial. Assets are things that put money into your pocket. Think rental properties, stocks that pay dividends, businesses, royalties. These generate income without you having to constantly trade your time for money. Liabilities take money out of your pocket. These can be expensive cars, large mortgages on homes that don't generate income, credit card debt, things that drain your finances. Rich Dad's golden rule: focus on acquiring assets and minimizing liabilities. This mindset flips the typical consumer thinking on its head. The power of mindset. Why beliefs about money matter. One of the fascinating ideas in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is how much our mindset shapes our financial outcomes. Robert's poor dad often said things like, "I can't afford that," or "It's risky to invest." These beliefs created mental barriers. On the other hand, Rich Dad encouraged a mindset of curiosity and learning around money. How can I afford that? And what can I do to make my money work for me? This willingness to think creatively about money opens doors to opportunities that fear and limiting beliefs close. The lesson of work. Working to learn, not just to earn. Another eye-opening lesson from Rich Dad is the idea that you shouldn't just work for money, but work to learn skills that will help you in the future. Instead of focusing only on salary, Rich Dad advised Robert to seek jobs that taught him sales, marketing, investing, and people skills. This shifts the focus from short-term income to long-term financial growth. For example, working in a company's sales department can teach you how to sell products and ideas, skills useful for entrepreneurship. Learning how to manage money within a business teaches you about financial statements and cash flow. Overcoming fear and taking calculated risks. Fear of losing money is one of the biggest reasons people avoid investing or starting businesses. Robert's poor dad was very risk-averse, often warning about the dangers of losing money. Rich Dad's approach wasn't about reckless risks, but about education and calculated risks. He taught Robert that being financially literate means understanding risks and knowing how to manage and minimize them. This empowers you to take smart chances that can grow your wealth. The importance of financial independence. The book stresses that true financial independence means your assets generate enough income to cover your expenses. When that happens, you don't have to trade hours for money anymore. Most people never reach this stage because they don't build assets. They accumulate liabilities instead, working harder but never gaining true freedom. Why the rat race is a trap. Robert uses the term rat race to describe the endless cycle of working for a paycheck to pay bills. This cycle traps many people in jobs they dislike and leaves little room for growing their wealth. Rich Dad's lessons encourage us to step out of this rat race by building assets and learning how money works so that money works for us. Had inspiration to think differently. By now, you can probably feel how Rich Dad Poor Dad encourages a complete shift in how we think about money and work. This is more than just a personal finance book. It's a guide to transforming your financial future through knowledge, mindset, and smart actions. If you're finding this approach refreshing and thought-provoking, this kind of deep dive into financial wisdom is exactly what Intellectual Talks is all about, bringing you ideas that challenge the norm and help you grow intellectually and financially. When you're ready, just ask for the next part, and we'll continue unpacking the practical lessons and stories that make Rich Dad Poor Dad a must-read for anyone serious about financial freedom. Rich Dad Poor Dad Part 2, diving deeper into financial education and the mindset shift. Welcome back. If you've been thinking about the first part, you're already starting to see how Rich Dad Poor Dad challenges the usual ideas about money and work. Now let's dive deeper into some of the most powerful lessons Robert Kiyosaki shares, focusing on financial education, the mindset shifts, and practical examples that bring these concepts to life. Why financial education is the true game changer. One of the book's strongest points is this: your financial education can never stop growing. Just like learning any skill, mastering money management requires continuous learning and experience. Robert's rich dad taught him that knowing how to read financial statements, like balance sheets and cash flow statements, is essential. This isn't something most schools teach, but it's the foundation of understanding whether a business or investment is making or losing money. You might be thinking, that sounds complicated, but here's the good news. It's not about becoming an accountant. It's about developing enough financial literacy so you can make smarter decisions. The Cashflow Quadrant explained. One of the most popular ideas from the book is the Cashflow Quadrant. This concept helps you understand the different ways people earn income. E, employee. You work for someone else and earn a paycheck. S, self-employed or small business owner. You work for yourself. Your income depends on your time and effort. B, business owner. You own a system or business that works for you, so money comes in, even when you're not there. I, investor. Your money works for you through investments that generate passive income. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to move from the left side, E and S, to the right side, B and I, where financial freedom lies. The difference? On the right side, your money and systems work for you instead of you working nonstop for money. This quadrant is a helpful roadmap if you want to break free from living paycheck to paycheck and build lasting wealth. The importance of developing multiple skills. Rich Dad didn't just focus on money. He emphasized learning a mix of skills: sales, marketing, investing, and people management. Why? Because money flows where skills go. Imagine you have a great idea or a business, but you can't sell it or communicate well. It won't succeed. On the flip side, strong financial knowledge helps you recognize good deals and avoid scams. This advice encourages a lifelong learning mindset. It's about constantly upgrading your skills to create and seize opportunities. Why it's critical to understand assets versus liabilities in detail. Earlier, we touched on the difference between assets and liabilities. Let's go a bit deeper here because it's one of the most crucial lessons in the book. Rich Dad insisted that many people confuse assets with liabilities because of common misconceptions. For example, a house is often thought of as an asset, but if it doesn't generate income and instead has ongoing costs, mortgage, taxes, maintenance, it can actually be a liability. True assets are things that put money in your pocket regularly without you having to work for it actively. These could be rental properties that pay you monthly, stocks or bonds that pay dividends or interest, royalties from creative work or inventions, businesses that can run with managers. By focusing on building assets, you create financial security and the ability to generate income passively. The role of fear and how to master it. One of the biggest hurdles people face in growing their wealth is fear. Fear of losing money, Fear of failure and fear of the unknown often hold people back. Rich Dad's advice? Don't let fear stop you from learning and taking action. Instead, treat mistakes as lessons. The more you educate yourself, the less fearful you become because you understand risks and how to manage them. This mindset shift, viewing failure as feedback, is a huge step toward financial independence. The power of taking action. Talking about money isn't enough. Action is key. Rich Dad constantly encouraged Robert to move beyond theory and start doing, investing small amounts to learn how markets work, starting businesses or side hustles to experience real-world financial dynamics, reading financial statements, analyzing deals, and asking questions. This hands-on approach builds confidence and skill. Remember, even the most successful investors started small and learned by doing. The lesson about taxes and corporations. A less obvious but powerful lesson in Rich Dad, Poor Dad is how wealthy people use corporations and tax laws to their advantage. Rich Dad explained that the rich often own corporations, which provide legal ways to reduce tax burdens and protect wealth. For example, a corporation can deduct business expenses before paying taxes, lowering taxable income. While this might sound complex or even unfair, the key takeaway is to educate yourself about tax laws and how you can legally protect and grow your money. This knowledge is part of being financially intelligent. Why it's important to surround yourself with like-minded people. Another subtle but important insight Robert shares is how much your environment influences your financial mindset. Rich Dad encouraged him to spend time with people who think about money and business in positive, growth-oriented ways. This helps you absorb new ideas, stay motivated, and avoid negative influences that promote fear or scarcity thinking. In real life, this could mean joining investment clubs, attending workshops, or simply discussing money openly with friends who share your goals. The invitation to think differently. At this point, you might be feeling inspired or even challenged by the ideas so far. That's exactly the point. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't just about money. It's about reshaping how you see the world, your potential, and your relationship with wealth. If you're enjoying this journey of discovery, this kind of transformative thinking is the heartbeat of Intellectual Talks. Here, we explore concepts that push boundaries, spark curiosity, and help you grow in meaningful ways. It's not just information, it's empowerment, building assets and taking control of your financial future. Welcome back. So far, we've laid a solid foundation, understanding the different mindsets about money, the importance of financial education, and why it's essential to develop the right skills and mindset. Now, let's dive into some practical strategies Robert Kiyosaki learned from his rich dad about building real wealth and taking control of your financial future. Building assets, the heart of wealth creation. The core message from Rich Dad is simple but powerful. Build assets that generate income, rather than liabilities that drain your finances. This principle is the foundation of wealth building. Many people get stuck buying things that seem valuable, like cars, fancy homes, or luxury gadgets, but these often cost more in upkeep and don't generate income. Rich Dad teaches that true wealth comes from accumulating assets that put money into your pocket. For example, investing in real estate. Rental properties provide steady cash flow if managed well. Owning stocks and bonds. These investments can pay dividends or interest over time. Starting businesses, especially those that don't require you to be there all the time. Intellectual property. Royalties from books, patents, or creative work. Robert learned to shift his focus from earning a salary to acquiring assets that produce income even when he's not working actively. The importance of financial statements. One practical tool Rich Dad stressed was learning how to read and understand financial statements. This includes the balance sheet, income statement, and cash flow statement. Why does this matter? Because knowing how to analyze these documents helps you spot good investment opportunities and avoid bad ones. For example, a rental property might seem attractive, but if the expenses outweigh the rental income, it's actually a liability, not an asset. By studying the numbers, you can make smarter choices. Robert's journey involved countless hours learning these skills, not in a classroom, but through experience and guidance from Rich Dad. The power of leverage. Leverage means using other people's money time, and resources to grow your wealth. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to use leverage wisely, borrowing money or partnering with others to expand opportunities. This doesn't mean reckless debt, but smart borrowing to buy income-producing assets that generate more than the cost of the debt. For instance, buying a rental property with a mortgage can be a form of leverage if the rent covers the mortgage payments and then some. Learning to manage risk. Like the rich. Risk is part of any financial decision, but how you approach it makes all the difference. Rich Dad taught Robert that the poor and middle class see risk as something to avoid, while the rich see risk as something to manage and minimize. How? Through education, due diligence, and diversification. Before investing, learn everything you can about the opportunity. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Spread your investments across different assets to reduce risk. Why fear and cynicism hold people back. Fear of losing money and cynicism about investing are common barriers. Robert's poor dad was often skeptical and worried about losing what little he had. This mindset kept him stuck. Rich Dad, on the other hand, embraced the possibility of failure as part of learning and growth. This attitude empowered Robert to take action despite fears. The value of sales and marketing skills. Another practical insight from Rich Dad was the importance of sales and marketing skills. Why? Because no matter how great your idea or product is, if you can't sell it, it won't succeed. Learning to sell isn't about being pushy. It's about understanding customer needs, communicating value, and building relationships. Robert worked in sales early on to develop these skills, which later helped him in business and investing. The shift from employee to entrepreneur. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to transition from working for money to making money work for him. This means moving from an employee mindset, trading time for money, to an entrepreneur and investor mindset, where you build systems and investments that generate income independently. This shift requires patience, education, and persistence, but leads to greater freedom and control. Practical steps to get started. Rich Dad's advice isn't just theory. Here are some practical first steps from the book. Start small. Invest in something manageable to build confidence. Educate yourself. Read books, attend seminars, and seek mentors. Save and reinvest. Use earnings to buy more assets, not liabilities. Take calculated risks. Don't wait for perfect opportunities. Start learning now. Build your financial IQ. Learn to understand money, taxes, and investing. Why this matters to you. If you're watching or reading this, maybe you're hungry for a better financial future. The good news is that the ideas in Rich Dad, Poor Dad aren't just for the wealthy. They're for anyone willing to learn and take action. Imagine waking up each day knowing your money is working hard for you, giving you freedom to live life on your terms. This is the kind of insight and inspiration Intellectual Talks loves to bring you, ideas that challenge the norm and empower you to think and act differently. Welcome back. We've covered mindset shifts, the importance of financial education, and how to build assets and manage risk. Now let's tackle some of the common myths about money and investing that Rich Dad, Poor Dad challenges. These insights help clear up misconceptions that often keep people stuck financially. Myth number 1, you need a high income to get rich. One of the biggest misconceptions Robert highlights is that earning a big paycheck automatically leads to wealth. In reality, income alone doesn't create wealth. Many people with high incomes still struggle financially because they spend what they earn on liabilities instead of assets. Rich Dad's lesson? It's not how much money you make, but how much money you keep and what you do with it that counts. Myth number 2, buying a house is always a smart investment. As we discussed before, many people believe home ownership is a guaranteed way to build wealth. But Rich Dad points out that a home often costs more than it earns. Mortgage payments, property taxes, repairs, these expenses add up and can be financial drains if the home doesn't generate income. So, while owning a home can be part of your financial plan, it shouldn't be mistaken for an automatic asset unless it brings in cash flow, like renting out rooms or the entire property. Myth number 3, you should avoid risk at all costs. Fear of risk is natural, but Rich Dad teaches that risk avoidance can be more dangerous. Not taking risks often means missing out on opportunities to grow wealth. The key is to learn how to assess and manage risk intelligently through education, experience, and diversification, rather than avoiding it completely. The truth about debt: good debt versus bad debt. Debt often gets a bad reputation, but Rich Dad explains there's a difference between bad debt, borrowing money to buy things that lose value and don't generate income, like a new car or consumer goods. Good debt, using borrowed money to invest in assets that generate income and increase in value, like rental properties or business investments. Understanding this distinction helps you leverage debt to build wealth rather than get trapped by it. Investing is a skill you develop over time. Another important lesson is that investing isn't about luck, it's a skill. Like any skill, it requires learning, practice, and patience. Robert's journey involved mistakes and learning curves, but with guidance from Rich Dad, he built confidence in analyzing deals and understanding markets. This reminds us that it's okay to start small, make mistakes, and keep learning. Why financial freedom is more than just money. Rich Dad also highlights that financial freedom means having options and control over your life. When your assets generate enough income to cover your expenses, you gain the freedom to make choices, whether to work, start a new venture, spend time with family, or travel. This freedom is the real goal, not just having a big bank balance. How to avoid the rat race trap. The rat race describes the exhausting cycle of working paycheck to paycheck without building lasting wealth. Many people get stuck here because they focus on earning and spending rather than investing and building assets. Rich Dad's advice is to break free by changing your mindset and financial habits. Spend less than you earn. Use surplus income to buy assets. Continuously educate yourself about money. Build multiple streams of income. The power of financial education in protecting your wealth. Knowing how money works also helps you protect your wealth from taxes, inflation, and scams. Rich Dad stressed learning how corporations and tax laws can be used legally to reduce tax burdens and protect income. For example, many wealthy individuals pay less in taxes by earning income through businesses rather than just wages. Why surrounding yourself with the right people matters. Your financial journey isn't just about money. It's also about the people you learn from and collaborate with. Rich Dad encouraged Robert to connect with mentors, investors, and entrepreneurs who could share knowledge and opportunities. This social environment fuels growth and keeps you motivated. Bringing it all together. By this point, you can see how Rich Dad Poor Dad challenges conventional wisdom and offers a fresh perspective on money, investing, and freedom. It's not a get-rich-quick scheme, but a blueprint for lifelong learning, mindset shifts, and practical action. If you found these ideas valuable, this is exactly the kind of thoughtful content we explore at Intellectual Talks, a space to expand your mind and your possibilities. Welcome back to the last part of our journey through Rich Dad Poor Dad. We've explored mindset shifts, financial education, building assets, busting myths, and managing risk. Now, it's time to tie it all together with some powerful final lessons and practical takeaways that you can start applying today. Lesson 1. The journey to financial independence is personal and ongoing. One thing Rich Dad made clear is that financial freedom is not an overnight achievement. It's a personal journey that requires patience, persistence, and continuous learning. Everyone's path looks different. There's no single right way. What matters most is your commitment to growing your financial IQ and making smart choices over time. Lesson 2. Take control of your financial education. Schools often don't teach practical money management, which leaves many people unprepared. Rich Dad's advice is to take responsibility for your own financial education. Read books, attend seminars, find mentors, and keep asking questions. The more you learn, the better your decisions will be. Lesson 3. Mindset is everything. Your attitude toward money shapes your financial reality. Rich Dad's Contrasting Dads taught Robert the importance of a growth mindset, believing you can learn and improve. Stop thinking like a victim or waiting for luck. Start thinking like someone who creates opportunities and controls their financial destiny. Lesson 4. Build and acquire assets relentlessly. The core of the book is clear. Focus on acquiring assets that generate cash flow. These assets are your ticket to financial freedom. Set clear goals around asset building, whether that's investing in real estate, stocks, or starting businesses. Lesson 5. Use money as a tool, not a goal. Money itself isn't the goal. It's the tool that enables you to live life on your own terms. When you see money as a tool, you'll be more willing to learn, take risks, and invest wisely. Lesson 6. Be brave enough to act. Learning is vital, but action is what transforms knowledge into results. Don't get stuck in analysis paralysis. Take small, consistent steps toward your goals. Each move forward builds confidence and momentum. The bigger picture, financial freedom equals choice. What Rich Dad really teaches is that true wealth is about freedom, the freedom to choose how you spend your time, who you spend it with, and how you live your life. This is an inspiring vision, and it's possible with the right mindset and knowledge. How intellectual talks can help you on this journey. As you explore these ideas, remember that gaining knowledge and inspiration is a continuous process. Intellectual Talks is here to guide you through thought-provoking content like this, helping you unlock new perspectives and make smarter decisions. If you're finding value in this journey, sticking around can empower you to keep learning and growing in all areas of life. Final thought. Rich Dad, Poor Dad isn't just a book about money. It's a roadmap for changing how you think about work, wealth, and freedom. By embracing its lessons, you open the door to a future where you're in control, where your money works for you, and your life is filled with options. Thanks for sticking with me through this deep dive.